All right, so we're going to watch a video today on Graham Hancock talking about the pyramids in Egypt and how they match up with the stars and the constellations and all this other stuff. When it comes to the Joe Rogan Experience, one of the most popular people and conversations and topics to come out of that show is Graham Hancock and also Randall Carlson. Their talks and theories and ideas about ancient civilizations and cataclysms that happened on Earth, and how they believe that human civilization was at its peak at some point about 10 to 12,000 years ago, and it was wiped out by a huge cataclysm, a meteor, a flooding, all this stuff. And they show great evidence of not only how the effects of the flood are shown on the Earth, but also how these ancient texts and scriptures talk about the flood, and not just only the Bible and Christianity, but literally in every single religion text that you can possibly find from any type of civilization that has existed in our history. They all talk about the flood. And one of the biggest mysteries on Earth when it comes to human civilization is the pyramids in Egypt and the Sphinx and all this different stuff. And when you listen to these guys talk about the pyramids, the information that they give you about how it matches up with the stars, and how it if you multiply the base by the height, it equals the Earth's, circumference, and like how that relates. There's so much information. It's so hard to remember, and I've been listening to these guys for a couple of years, and I just wish I could remember and put it all together. And sometimes the timeline of the events gets screwed up in my head. So I found a podcast that Graham Hancock did with these. I can't remember the name of the page that he did it on, but he very clearly and simply states how the pyramids and the Sphinx match up to the stars and the constellations, and what that means. He talks about the precession of the Earth and how it wobbles, and how that gives us a different viewing platform of the stars and the constellations and the spring equinox and all this different stuff that is hard to remember when he gives you all the information at once. But when you have it, stated clearly like he did here, it's really nice to just go back to and listen to, so I can clearly understand what it is that he is saying, so that I can go on and tell other people that don't know the information very clearly what is going on with the pyramids and the Sphinx in Egypt. And after you watch this clip here, I also recommend you go to this page right here, this YouTube channel called After School, and you watch Randall Carlson's video. It's like 2 hours long. It's freaking insane about sacred geometry and numbers, and how numbers are the numbers of the pyramid, and how it relates to the freaking Earth and the sun, and the freaking distance between the moon and the sun and the Earth and the equator and the gravity. And all these numbers are the same numbers that keep showing up in nature, not only in space and the universe, but in like plants. And how religious texts throughout the history of human civilization, they have these numbers embedded into their stories and their symbols, and it's freaking crazy. And geometry is like ruling the universe. It's like unbelievable, this freaking video that he has there. So I highly, highly, highly recommend, after you watch this clip of Graham Hancock, you go and watch that after school program or after school video of Randall Carlson, because I am balls deep in this stuff right now. This week, for some reason, I have been like going crazy. I've been watching so many different videos on ancient civilizations and religious texts, and it's just been crazy. My mind is like about to blow up. So let's get into the video for today. This is Graham Hancock just talking about the spring equinox and its relation to the constellations, and how the Sphinx is lined up with that, and what the precession means of the Earth's, the Earth goes through this precession thing, and it's just easy to understand. So let's get into this video here. I'm going to play the clip, and then I will end the video there. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.
And I mean, to cut a long story short, precession is an observed phenomenon. At the moment, if you take the North Pole of the Earth, the axis of the Earth, and you extend the North Pole up into the heavens, you will find that that is pointing at a particular star, pretty much. And that star is called Polaris. And that's our pole star in our time. But it hasn't always been the pole star. And it won't always be the pole star, because there's a wobble on the axis of the Earth. And therefore, that extended North Pole is actually transcribing a great circle in the heavens. And sometimes it will point at empty space, and sometimes it will point at another star. There have been a number of stars in the past that have been pole stars. Thuban in Draco was a pole star about 4,000 years ago. At the same time, and this is where it edges into what we now call astrology. There are the 12 constellations of the zodiac, and why are they recognized as such? Because they are the constellations against the background of which the sun rises, according to a very definite schedule. And the greatest interest in ancient times was what constellation houses the sun on the spring equinox. What constellation is rising behind the sun? The sun is seen to be in the grip of that constellation at dawn on the spring equinox. And in our time, that is the constellation of Pisces. And we live in the age of Pisces. Within a lifetime or two, it will have shifted into the constellation of Aquarius. And we do live in the dawning of the age of Aquarius at dawn on the spring equinox. Before Pisces, it was Aries. Before Aries, it was Taurus. And you can go back and back and back and back and back. And whether it's to do with the pole star or whether it's to do with the constellation that houses the sun at dawn on the spring equinox, these changes are all caused by that wobble on the axis of the Earth. It's our viewing platform from which we observe the stars. As it changes its orientation in the heavens, naturally the orientation and the rising times of particular stars will change. It's thought that the Greeks, perhaps as recently as less than 200 BC, 2,200 years ago or so, were the discoverers of precession. But what Santillana and von Deschend absolutely demonstrated is that they were simply rediscovering or redeploying much older knowledge. Now, it takes a long time to observe this. You have to be very precise to observe this. It unfolds at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. The whole cycle takes 25,920 years to complete. And to observe it precisely and predict it accurately and know exactly what's going on, and then to create a symbol for it, a great mill turning in the heavens, and to use that symbol and to combine it with numbers that are referenced in myths and traditions all around the world, they detected the fingerprints of an ancient science in that, which had largely been forgotten, but the key elements of it were remembered through great storytelling, through myth, through traditions, and through the notion of world ages. And this is definitely the work of something that we would need to recognize as a civilization with scientific focus. And that is a civilization that can and did arise out of shamanism. Shamans are very observant of the cosmos and of what is going on in the cosmos. Second thing is the existence of ancient maps, which show the world as it's just a narrative they don't want to hear.
Right.
So they dismiss it. But if I were to try to envisage the Giza Plateau 12,500 years ago, I think what we'd see is an enormous rock-hewn statue of a lion facing due east, perfectly due east, where the sun rises on the spring equinox. Sun rises perfectly due east in the northern hemisphere on the 21st of March. If you go to the summer solstice, it's rising far to the north of east. You go to the winter solstice, it's rising far to the south of east. But on the spring equinox, it's perfectly due east. So there's this huge lion statue with a massive leonine head and a lion's mane. And it's been created by carving it out of the bedrock and creating a trench around it. And it faces the rising sun at dawn on the spring equinox, as it still does today. But 12,500 years ago, the rising sun at dawn on the spring equinox was housed by the constellation of Leo, the constellation that we recognize and many cultures have recognized as a lion. So as above, so below, this lion monument gazing at its celestial counterpart rising behind the sun at dawn on the spring equinox. I believe that the megalithic temples that we see in front of the Great Sphinx, the so-called Sphinx Temple and the Vali Temple, these are colossal megalithic works, were also there at that time, around 12,500 years ago. And what happened was that in later times, the ancient Egyptians, who were the inheritors of the culture that originally established the Giza Plateau, that the ancient Egyptians found it necessary to restore and modify some very ancient monuments. So that's why on the Vali Temple, which is in front of, but a little to the south of the Great Sphinx. That's why on the Valley Temple, we see that it's created in two stages. The first stage is the core limestone blocks, and they are massive, hundreds of tons in some cases, certainly up to 200 tons in the case of some of these megalithic temples. That we down long predated the Spaniard age of the world to an end. The same story of survivors of that flood who went around the world trying to reincarnate or give rebirth to what they had created and shared their knowledge with other peoples around the world. This is truly a Pan-American myth.